Well, thank you everybody for being here. We're gonna be covering a quite interesting session regarding the end of third-party cookies. We have two of the most important industry leaders with us, so they will be covering quite a whole lot of things that uh, most publishers are concerned about. Eventually, Jan's going to kick off with what publishers can expect from this 2024. And then Robin's going to take the conversation and actually explain to us how publishers' revenue is going to be affected because of the demise of third-party cookies. Eventually, after both sessions, and they will be discussing, hey, is there any direct relation between the end of the cookies and revenue losses? When everything's finished, we will open the mics so that everybody can just ask questions. In case the mics don't work for any reason, feel free to drop your questions on the chat. We will be reading all the questions that you have, and hopefully we can cover all the issues and concerns that you guys have. Well, so without further ado, Jan, you can take the floor.
Yeah, so need to find the button. Okay, yeah. My name is Jan Winkler. I'm the CEO of Content Manager, so I'm a bit for the legal part, so to say, here in this group. And we are looking on what's going to happen or what already happened in this year, a bit from the legal perspective, meaning things that are related to data protection, privacy, etc., that will affect the publisher business or the advertising business in the upcoming months. So if you can go to first slide. So a while back in January, we already had the first changes this year. Google had a requirement, or now has a requirement, that you need to use the TCF. So if you're a publisher and you have Google AdSense or Google Ad Mob or the Ad Manager, so the Google advertising tools, basically, if you had any of those on your website, you are now required to use the TCF, so the IAB transparency and consent standard, to signal to Google basically if consent is happening or not happening. If you don't use a CMP with TCF, then basically Google will stop showing ads. There is a phase where Google is like in between. So on 16th of January, they started for mobile and web, but not for 100% of the inventory, but I think for the first 10% or something in January, and then it increased and increased. And I think at the end of March now they will be at 100%. So if you don't have a CMP with TCF yet, then it's about time. That's for web and mobile. CTV, so smart TV, HBB TV, and all these things will come a bit later. So that's in July, when it's also required to have a TCF CMP in your TV app. And also the important thing is, not only you need to have a TCF, but you also need to have a TCF or a CMP that supports this additional consent. It's not the same as the consent mode. It's not the same as the TCF. It's again something they are not really new, because it is there for a while, but it's now a new version 2. It's basically another way for the cookie banner to signal to Google that certain vendors have consent. And in this case, all the vendors that are not registered with the TCF, for example, Facebook, Booking.com, IBM, around 600 vendors. So if you're working with these vendors, or if these vendors are important for you, maybe they are, probably they are, then it makes sense that you have a CMP that not only supports TCF, but also this additional consent. And yeah, as I said, it's required for the AdSense, AdMob, Ad Manager in the EU, so EEA actually, so EU plus Norway plus Iceland plus Liechtenstein, and also in the UK. So kind of Europe without Switzerland. Switzerland is special in this case. So that was in January. Also in January, we had this the IRB US Privacy API deprecation. So if you're in the US, the US websites or the US publishers have been using this privacy API that has been replaced with GPP. Not fully replaced yet because the IRB standard is not it's not updated fully yet. There is a piece missing for the data deletion. But if you are in the US, if you're a US publisher, then also there you had to update your TCF or your CMP implementation. So the year already started with a lot of changes for publishers. Next slide. And it continues with a lot of changes. So February, the Digital Service Act or DSA came into force. Before it was only in force for VLOPs, so very large online platforms and very large online search engines. So that's the very large ones are the Google search and Facebook and stuff. Now from 16th of February on, it's also applicable for the very important, so the normal ones, let's say, so the normal online platforms. We have a list there because it's really kind of a broad definition, but also not covering everybody. So, for example, covered are social media platforms like LinkedIn, Xing, vKontakte, stuff like this, online forums, Gute Frage, Discuss, etc. Everything that's with content sharing, like Dropbox, etc. Video and music sharing, it's kind of the same, content sharing, music sharing. Online marketplaces, so places where you can sell your own goods or where third parties can sell their stuff. So it's not about a store, but a marketplace. Then we have online booking platforms like Booking.com, Expedia, and this. So where you have search results that can be sorted, right? And then you have suggestions for buying the latest or the best travel, for example. Auction platforms, eBay, Mobile.de, Autoscout, etc. Price comparison platforms and crowdfunding platforms. So if your website is in one of those categories and you are not a minimum, what's the word? Small or smallest enterprise. So that is 50 employees and or 10 million in revenues per year. So if you're below this, then you're out. If you're above and if you in one of these categories, then you are an online platform and you have additional transparency requirements. You have a lot of other requirements, but for the advertising part, you have transparency requirements. On the left side here, we see how this can look. Basically, what the law envisions, it doesn't need to be this way, but what they envision is that you have an icon on the edge or on the footer where you can click and where you can see the main parameters for the advertising. So who is advertising? So who is the advertiser? Who paid for this advertising in case that's not the same? And why do I see the advertising? So what's the main parameters? What kind of targeting was used? So you can see why or how my personal data was used for showing me this ad, and then to explain to the user how they get out of this. Basically, what can they do to change these parameters or to opt out of the marketing. So that's a new requirement since February for online platforms. As said, the definition is quite broad, but also not. It doesn't cover everybody. Online forums and social media, for example, an example there is if the website, the main goal is really social media or commenting or forums, then you are a platform. But let's say you're a news website and you just have a comment section under each article, then you are not a platform. So you don't need to have the DSA if you just have a comment section. But basically, you need to see when the commenting and the social stuff becomes really important for the website. When is it the main topic, so to say, of the website? And if it's a main topic, then you are a platform. And yeah, as I said, if it's just a side topic, so to say, then you're not a platform. So there will be also a lot of discussion in the future to find out which websites are actually platforms or not platforms. There has been a recent study by the Bundesnetzagentur, so the German federal ministry for basically for online stuff. And this study came to the conclusion that there's about 1,000 online platforms that are affected by DSA in Germany. So if you're looking at Europe, there's probably, let's say, 10,000, 15,000, I don't know, something like this maybe. So it's a bigger group, but as I said, not everybody is affected. So that was February. Next slide, please. Yeah, then we have March. March, next laws came into effect or into force for certain companies. We have the Digital Markets Act on the 6th of March. So like last week, Google changed again something because Google is one of the main companies that's affected by the DMA. They are now requiring their consent mode V2 for Google Analytics and Google AdWords. So the Google Ads part. So that's not the advertising part. So if you had Google Ads on your page, but is about if you are an advertiser and you have the Google tracking on your page. So the analytics tracking and the tracking for the Google Ads, for example, remarketing and everything that belongs to it. So for most publishers, it's probably not a Google Ads topic, but a Google Analytics topic, because many of you are probably tracking your their visitors with Google Analytics. So since 6th of March, it is very much recommended that you have a CMP on a page that supports the Digital Markets Act with the Google consent mode. If you don't have it, Google will basically limit the tracking. You will not see a personalized data about the people on your page. You will not see certain e-commerce data. Basically, the data is limited. Also, last week, we had an important ruling on the IAB TCF. So the standard that we just discussed that was enforced by Google in January. There was a court ruling by the ECG, so the highest European court. The background story there is that the IAB Europe is a Belgium entity, so the Belgium Data Protection Authority, the APD, they had basically a fine against the IAB Europe and basically said that the IAB Europe is a controller and they need to do certain things that controllers need to do, and they're not just a standardization organization. They're more than this. And the IAB Europe basically fought against that, and that whole thing went before the ECG. The ECG ruled. Basically, there was like two main questions and 3 sub-questions. The summary of it is the TC string, so the consent string. That's what the CMP creates when you click on accept. This information is personal data. It is, it's not non-personal data. It can be personal data by definition. It might be that it needs consent. It might be that it doesn't need consent. It's a bit on the details that the ECG did not 100% clarify. So there is wording around if it's combined with other data, for example, an IP address, then it's definitely personal data. So it's about, we need to see what the APD will say. So basically, the ECG ruled now, gave it back to the APD, and the APD needs to make their own ruling based on this. So the first thing is the consent string is personal data. The second is the IAB Europe is a joint controller with its members. So it's most likely that, for example, the IAB Europe will need to have a JCA, so joint controllership agreements with other members. So all the members that are in IAB Europe probably need some kind of new contract, probably maybe somewhere in between. And the third thing that came out there, for example, was that the IAB is not a joint controller for the processing that is based on the TCF. So everything that's on the website, when it's happening on the website, you give consent, and then whatever the display ads are showing, that's no longer where the IAB and where the TCF is a controllership in the controllership rule. So that's just the vendor as we know it, so to say. The whole thing is important because depending on how the APD now will do its own ruling, it can mean less or more changes to the TCF. There is already an action plan from the IAB Europe that is in place that should be rolled out once the ruling is complete. And depending on the APD ruling, this action plan can change and can become a bit more, let's say, publisher unfriendly or a bit more publisher friendly. Let's see what it comes. So it stays interesting there. So there is March. So that's what we already had. Now let's take a look at the future. Next slide, please.
Sorry, is it possible to ask a question here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the chat is closed for some users. Otherwise, I would have posted it in the chat. So I apologize for interrupting. My name's Zach. I'm from NL Times. I just wanted to ask a question about the ECJ ruling, if you could go back a little bit. Because what I thought the ruling was that it determined that the TC string itself is personal data within the context of GDPR.
Yes and no.
At least I'm sort of looking at a press release from the European court now. That's what they said. I didn't read the ruling. I just read the statement from the court. So I was just wondering if you could go into that just a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a bit complex, right? The ruling is like, I think 100 paragraphs or something. So the problem is the content string itself in this ruling. So the question that the court answered is basically, is the TC string personal data for the IAB Europe? And there the answer is yes, because the IAB Europe has the means of connecting the TC string with an IP address. And therefore, for the IAB Europe, it is personal data because they can combine it. And if you have the IP address, then basically everything that you combine with this IP address becomes personal data. The problem that for a publisher, for a vendor, etc., is do vendors and publishers have the same means? It is likely, but it's not necessarily always the case, right? So there can be scenarios, if you think about OpenRTB, where you maybe get the TC string, but not the IP address. And then there's the question, is it still personal data? Probably yes, but also there is a case where it's probably not personal data. So it's really, how should I say, all of the court cases, they're always like specific to this one case, right? So we get these answers to this one case, and we know that for this case, the answer is personal data, but it's not a general. It does not need to be always personal data. The note that some commenters made is there is another case. I think it's a case in Germany actually, where the German court actually ruled that the consent string is always personal data because it's the expression of the user's wishes. And how would it not be personal if it's not the user's wish, right? It's kind of in the name. So if you follow this ruling, then yes, personal data, consent string is always personal data. But yeah, it remains tricky. We will need to see what the APD would say. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, then let's continue. So first quarter is done. Let's look at the next quarter or the next half maybe. In the second quarter, what will become more and more important? So Google started with the deprecation of third-party cookies. They launched this privacy sandbox as an alternative, or as a box of alternatives. So it's important to understand. So third-party cookies will go away. First-party cookies and local storage will still remain, but also local storage is very limited in its features. And what Google is proposing is this privacy sandbox. It's important to understand that it's not just one thing. It's a set of ideas or technologies. It's not just one thing. Basically, it's a lot of things. I picked the three, what I think the most important for publishers are. Three most important examples. The first thing is in this privacy sandbox, there is something called Protected Audience API. It is basically Google's replacement for remarketing. So if you remarketing at the moment, if you go to a shop, you look at a product, you get a cookie. This cookie will say, "Hey, you saw this product." And then if you go to another website, this website will read the cookie, or the advertising in the website will read the cookie and will show you, remarketing for this product. But if you don't have third-party cookies, then you can't have the connection between the shop that you saw before and the product or the ad on the other page. And this protected audience API is basically connecting the two dots in a privacy-friendly way. So marketers can select their audience. An auction will be held within the browser without actually asking the vendors. The auction will be held, and then the best matching ad for whatever reason, for whatever logic, will or can be shown. So as I said, it's a replacement for remarketing, a bit a replacement for pre-bid kind of situations. Not all of the situations, but at least the remarketing situations. It's fairly complex and fairly technical, but it will come. It's the market's already, the bigger players are already adapting to this. So that's one thing. The other thing is fenced frames will become a thing. Basically, everybody knows an iframe, right? It's a window within a window. Most of the ads are currently delivered in an iframe. So if you have advertising, you will have basically an iframe, a window, a tiny window, and in this iframe you will have the ads. And at the moment, it is that the ads still have some possibility to see what's outside of the iframe. So basically, what's the main page, what's the domain, and there can be some communication. And this communication can also be used for tracking. So the privacy sandbox, in order to prevent tracking, will limit this. So the fenced frames are really, if you think about it you can think about it like an iframe where the content is really completely separated from the website. So what's in the iframe will not have any chance to find out what's outside of the iframe. That brings a lot of problems. Less tracking, less things like you don't know what the referrer is or on which page is the advertising. So there's some things, some challenges that come with it. Let's see what it is, but there's already also some adaptation. So we already see websites that use fenced frames. It's very little, but it's coming. And the third thing is a topics API. So that's interest-based ads. Also, Google or the Chrome browser within its privacy sandbox is categorizing the websites, and advertisers basically can ask the browser, hey, can I like to show ads for a certain category. Does this user fit this category? And then basically the ads can be shown based on these ad categories. Again, without the need for cookies, without the need for tracking. In this case, the Chrome browser will do everything for us. The problem with all of this is it's the Chrome browser. It's a kind of a black box situation, controlled by Google in a certain way. The IAB, for example, had I also think 120 pages on like a long PDF file with all their let's say criticism on the privacy sandbox. So there's a lot of discussion at the moment, but that's something that will definitely come and that will definitely expand, just due to Google being or Chrome being one of the major browsers. Right? Also, what will happen in the first quarter, if you're a US publisher or if the US is important for you, 1st of July is the date for the Oregon and the Texas law. Texas, I mean, Oregon is not so important, it's not the biggest, but Texas is quite big in sense of people that live there. So there's new US state laws that are focused on data protection. There is the need for the opt-out of sale. There's a need for opt-out of targeted ads and profiling. So you need to enable more options for users. You need to show probably a CMP there, or at least an opt-out link so that the users can do opt-out. And you should prepare now, because 1st of July is the date when it comes to force. Next slide, please. So, and then just a quick look for basically the end of the year, Q3 and 4, things that might come or will come in some cases. For example, currently there's a discussion on Switzerland in the IAB. So Switzerland is a bit like in between the seats. Some publishers are using the TCF in Switzerland, some are not using TCF in Switzerland. Some vendors care, some other vendors don't care. So it's in between somewhere. there is a wish from parties to support some kind of TCF-like thing in Switzerland. So that's very likely that there will be some evolution in this direction. Also, India and Brazil are big economies that have significant privacy laws and a significant advertising and publishing economy. So it's also likely that we will see some developments in this direction. Also, towards the end of the year, it is likely that we will get rid of the TCF, not as the TCF itself, as a policy, but as a technical framework. There is already GPP that is basically GPP is meant as a replacement, was always meant as a replacement, as a technical thing that can combine all of them. And it's time that, or there will be the time in the probably near future that we will start a switch from the TCF API to the GPP API. As yet, the policy requirements will be the same. The consent string will kind of look the same. You will have the vendor list, etc. But for publishers, for example, you will probably need to either change the CMP code. If you have, for example, a consent manager, you don't really need to change the code. But if you have like these open source CMPs or these, let's say, not so expensive CMPs, then you might need to change the codes. Same in if you have SDKs or app environments, you probably also need to become a bit more active. And then also in the state laws, Montana will be becoming into force 1st of October, and then you also can or want to prepare for Iowa 1st of January. So more US state laws that you might want to focus on. And that's the quick, well, not so quick, but that's the overview on this year on the legal basis. Yeah, back to you guys.
Thanks a lot. Well, we're going to continue with the presentation. Now it's over to you, Robin.
Yes, Jan, thank you so much for that overview of all the coming changes with regards to the privacy policy. Now let's focus on the question of this webinar. Does the deprecation of the cookies mean that we're going to see revenue losses for publishers?
Nice.
Okay, don't worry. It's not going to be that dramatic. We believe, at least, that the ecosystem is going to maintain itself, and eventually life will go on. Please allow me to elaborate a little bit on that. This, by the way, is my cousin. Don't worry, that's not me with a mustache. So what we have is what it is going to be deprecated is going to be the third-party cookies. And this is what's being used within the ecosystem. Of course, the whole programmatic ecosystem is much broader than what we have on screen over here. But the most important factors are the SSPs, the DSPs, the advertisers, and the publishers. And each one, of course, has their own interest in making sure that this transition from to a third-party-less world is going to go smoothly. So let's have a look at some of the changes that are actually going to happen. So as we mentioned, cookies are being deprecated. It's been quite clear this is the third-party cookies. We'll go into what the difference between first and third-party cookies in a second. But this has basically been announced in 2020 already, which means that the market has been having a long time to start thinking about it and to start preparing itself for this new era of privacy. Of course, right now it's being accelerated by all the legal changes that Jan mentioned before. What we're seeing, what we're seeing is that, for example, advertisers, they've been actively looking for solutions, some of which we'll go into detail in as well. But just seeing, okay, how can we reach these customers without actually using the third-party cookies, which in some cases might, for example, be first-party data. Then we also have third parties. These are indeed the Google, for example, Jan mentioned before, the privacy sandbox. which is being developed, an open source project, so to speak, managed by Google. I was in a webinar with them the other day. They already mentioned that Jan mentioned 3 solutions that were apparently working already, but in total there were more than 20 already. But the way we see it is that these are options, and then Consent Manager. They're also Jan actually just showed that they're very much on top of what's happening with all the changes worldwide in this sense, to make sure that they're also staying on top and that their solution stays relevant and provides the services that their customers require. And then, of course, from a publisher perspective, right now third-party cookies are very important for generating the revenue. And over time, we've seen implementation of a correct CMP is very important. So that's happening. That's something that's happening right now. But at the same time, they are moving towards a phase where, at least the larger ones, maybe not so much the smaller ones, but are experimenting with first-party data and making sure that these can be, that this can actually also be used by the advertiser again, because that's the way it works. The advertisers lose their own third-party data. They need to make sure that they get access to this first-party data in one way or another. So actually, a takeaway that I had from the webinar the other day with Google was that they mentioned the best thing that Google can do for the industry to progress is to actually stick to the deadlines. The reason why I want to point this out is because since this change was announced in 2020, it has been postponed many, many times, and it was only this year that they actually started to enforce it. And of course, there are commercial reasons behind this. The whole advertising industry is, of course, a multi-billion-dollar industry. So everybody wants to make sure that things keep working the way they are working right now. That being said, advertisers are, of course, a key part of the ecosystem. They're the ones that are making the investments to buy the advertising space, to run their campaigns. For them, it's becoming increasingly important to be able to buy the required advertising space without the third-party cookies, because that's what we're losing, while still maintaining the same, hopefully, accuracy of targeting, and also, of course, the KPIs or the performance metrics that they're looking at. From our point, just in case there are any advertisers in this webinar, we quickly wanted to show our own first-party solution that we are using. So at Refinery89, we have what we call is a contextual plus solution. So this is our answer to the third-party cookie deprecation. What it does is we scan all the articles on of the publishers that we work with, which is the contextual part. This means that we're scanning for keywords. We're scanning whether articles are positive or negative. Any negative articles, we do not include these in our contextual database, and but the problem with this is that contextual articles are only relevant at the moment that you're getting traffic for them. Say, for example, a article about a tennis match is only relevant while the tennis match is ongoing, and maybe a couple of hours after, because 3-4 days after that article is not going to be attracting visitors anymore, and therefore the contextual advertising on that specific page itself will have lost its value. So what we do with the contextual plus is that we're using, in this case, first-party cookies. We link this to a user, and like this, we're using AI-based contextual. We combine this with the contextual interest audiences to make sure that we're actually building first-party audiences for our advertisers. So like this, we no longer have an article that's relevant about tennis while the tennis match is ongoing, but we actually create an internal audience of people that are interested in tennis in this case. But since we're using AI, this also helps us enrich this data into much more detail. Of course, tennis is just a broad category, but if we combine, I don't know, tennis with automotive, for example, a very specific brand might be interested in that and say, okay, hey, this is indeed the segment that I want to target, and then we can provide that regardless of whether there's traffic for that at this moment.
We got a question
Oh.
from Zach.
Yes.
You want to open your mic and shoot the question, or I think you actually
Sure.
wrote.
Yeah, I put it in the chat also, but you'd mentioned negative pages and articles would not be included in Contextual Plus. Could you please expand on the definition of a negative page or a negative article?
Okay, so well, let's say, for example, the war in Ukraine that's ongoing right now. I would assume that any reports on what might be going on battlefield will be seen as negative. I mean, it's the how would we sum it up? I would sum it up as the content that's generally not attractive for advertisers. So anything that that might write about violence doesn't actually need to be a very descriptive article, but just the sense of, okay, hey, it doesn't make somebody necessarily feel good. Is what would be considered a negative article. Like it's that's the thing with the AI. It actually analyzes the sentiment of the article. So like, okay, how would this make the user feel? Do I answer your question more or less like that?
Yes, but not but in a somewhat nerve-wracking way for somebody who works in news.
No, so actually something that we want to do is for our publishers at least is well, it's still going to take a little bit of time, but soon make this insightful for our publishers. So actually share this contextual data or the contextual scanning with you, so that our publishers are all actually able to see for themselves which articles are being defined as negative and which ones are being defined as positive in this sense. So hopefully that that will take away your worries a little bit. But in general, anything, I guess you could say, war, maybe a car crash, maybe let's see, other negative news could be burglaries in a certain neighborhood.
Yeah, so like
that would be
more than half of a news publisher's
regarded as negative.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Right.
Yeah, like for instance, I mean, AI would be able to tell, for instance, a house is on fire, which is negative, or a striker is on fire, which means he's scoring a whole lot of goals. So negative, positive, the AI actually understands the content.
Yeah, I understand. It's you know, again, as someone who publishes news content, you know, it's obviously a disconcerting prospect that using an analysis like this could dictate or could change somebody's approach to what they actually cover and, you know, and what stories they produce because of what's profitable versus what isn't.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Even if you were to do that, that shouldn't be an issue, because in the end, the contextual part of the articles, so of the positive articles, is there just to build the audiences. Those audiences are then to be actually employed by the advertisers to run their campaigns. So it could well be that even though, let's say, 80% of your articles are being scanned as negative, you will still get the same, relatively like the same investment from advertisers because the audience is being taken from somewhere else.
Right, I understand what you're saying. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So we definitely do not want to dictate what you write about. It's a free press. You're good, Zach? We can move on?
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't want to carry such an interruption.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
All right, cool. All right, okay. Need to get back on my train of thought now. So we, as mentioned before, we also have the SSPs and the DSPs in the mix over here. We think it's important to mention them in the middle because in the end, we need to make sure that the data, for example, as with the Contextual Plus solution, actually is being shown or is being given to the advertiser. So, we need to make sure that that's of course done in a way that the advertiser gets the data, and at the same time through the SSPs and DSPs, can keep using this. So right now, most of this data is only, at least for the Contextual Plus, for example, is only available through direct sales or IO purchases. But we are exploring the options right now to make that available as well in a programmatic manner. And just like us, there are going to be other parties that are working with first-party data that are all looking for the same solutions. Of course, there are some solutions out there already, but it's just a matter of the industry finding out what is going to be the leading method of making sure that this first-party data is being sold to the advertisers. And that's going to be probably a recurring theme also in other parts. And then the same with the CMP. Like ConsentManager.net, ConsentManager.net is the CMP that we actually provide our publishers with. They need to make sure that that their product respects the local requirement or the local legal requirements at that moment. So to give an example, especially for the Dutch publishers in here, in Spain, France, and Italy, about 2 months ago, they introduced the new legislation was enforced that that now means that all CMPs in Spain need to have a reject all buttons through which a user can easily reject all cookies. But at the same time, of course, the accept all button is still there, which allows third-party cookies for the moment. Of course, in the future, that's going to be first-party cookies only that are allowed. And then, of course, the settings button is there for anything in between, accepting them all and rejecting them all. So I wanted to distinguish a little bit further between first-party cookies and third-party cookies to make sure that now that third-party cookies are being phased out, we're exactly clear on what is being phased out. So what is allowed to stay are going to be the first-party cookies. So these are cookies that are set by the website domain and that the user is visiting. So this is normally done for user experience on the website and remembering stuff like login credentials. On the other side, we have third-party cookies. So this is set by domains other than the one the user is currently using. So typically used for tracking, advertising purposes, etc. So it's the third-party cookies which Google is focusing on right now on deprecating. So going back to the third-party Google deprecation from Google, it was earlier this year that they actually, as mentioned before, they started enforcing this at a rate of 1% of all the users are currently running without third-party cookies. And this is what everybody got everybody worried from the start. So I thought it would be good to elaborate a little bit further on that, on how the process is going to go. So right now, they are testing with 1% of the cookies. This testing period is going to last until at least July 2024. Then there's a standstill period in which the CMA, which is the British privacy watchdog, so to speak, is going to evaluate the solutions for targeting without third-party cookies. This period is going to last anywhere between 60 to 20 days. Then there is going to be some time in case there are any objections from the CMA to make sure that that they can make changes. And then at the earliest in Q4, so it's anywhere perhaps between September and November, that they're going to start the total phase out of the third-party cookies. I thought it was interesting the way they phrased it, that it's phase out, that it appears that it's going to be a gradual process, not from one day to the other, but that remains to be seen later on this year, how exactly that's going to take shape. So in the meantime, of course, everybody else in the industry is going to try and get ready. So they're looking at options to compensate for the loss of the third-party cookies. As we already mentioned, the contextual solution. Well, there are other contextual solutions out there, of course, as well. There are Jan, I think, mentioned a couple of options as well. And other than that, there's things like universal IDs or data clean rooms, which again all are options in the sense of, okay, how can we make sure that the industry keeps going? So going back to the question, will the end of the third-party cookies impact publishers' revenue? The honest answer is we can't be 100% sure right now. And the reason we can't be 100% sure is that right now we're only testing this on a very small percentage of the traffic. There are many solutions which are being developed by Google, but of course also by others. I keep repeating Google because, well, not only because we're a Google partner, but because, like it or not, they are also very dominant in this industry. And they will most likely have a say in how fast this is going to go. If Google can't find a proper working solution towards the end of the year, let's be honest with ourselves, it's quite likely that they're going to postpone it because in the end, they also don't want to make a loss. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit our take, that in the end, the market will decide on the best solutions and self-adapt to the deprecation of the third-party cookies, meaning that there should be no revenue loss. Everybody should be okay. As long as you're not sleeping under a rock. We do have to keep paying attention and make sure that we do actually implement the correct solutions as soon as they become more widely available. But until that time, it's very important to keep our eyes open and pay attention to what the market is doing. So yeah, that being said, I open the floor to any questions that might be out there.
Also, Jan, if you want to give a short summary because we skipped the last part because of time constraint. So if you want to give a short recap or anything you want to say, considering the big question.
The big question. I just wanted to say maybe in regards to the Google thing. Yeah, so it's going to phase out. Indeed, the big question is how long, how much, and will it change? There was some heavy pushback for the privacy sandbox, for example, and I think I actually read that the CMA is thinking about basically telling Google to not deprecate the third-party cookies in case when there is not a vital solution. So it's going to be interesting what will come there. There will be something, right? So third-party cookies, they will go away, but it's really, really unsure how it will go away. But I think the summary that you made, and that's the good part for all of us, is Google or all of the players have a big interest in keeping the ad revenues, and therefore I don't think that anybody needs to fear that the revenues are going down. We will just need to find new ways of achieving the same goals or similar goals, right?
All right. Well, now it's up to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to open your mics, and of course the chat should be open now. I did get one question through the email. It seems that chat wasn't working. Sorry about that. And the question is, what impact do you guys think will the elimination of third-party cookies have on ad price and CPM rates of my inventory? I guess this is a publisher asking.
Yeah, I guess there's more for me than
Yeah.
than for Jan. Well, this depends. That depends also on the inventory. I mean, with first-party data, of course, becoming more important in that sense, it's the kind of first-party data that can be generated. So a publisher that maybe has a very niche audience will be able to generate first-party data that is then able to sell for quite a high price. But at the same time, a more general publisher that has a more general audience, of course, will have a much larger audience, but the prices might be relatively lower. It's also a little bit what can be done with that data. I mean, it's one thing is just okay, hey, this user visited my website, so to speak. But if you are able to if that data is able to somehow be enriched, well, might actually even be beneficial or like positive in that sense, and you might be able to get a higher CPM than you're currently doing. That would then also actually raise the question why you're not already doing that right now.
Yeah. Okay. But we are getting some questions over the chat. Alba is asking any ideas on how affiliate commission attribution will work without cookies. Some of them are second party, but some are not. Will contextual manage that part?
Oof. That's a very good question. I haven't thought about that yet, but I need like something like contextual. That would be my go-to answer. Yeah, I think something like contextual could actually already benefit when it comes to affiliate marketing at this point, because you're no longer reaching a broad audience, but you're already specifying it before.
Okay. And another question from
Very quickly on this.
sorry.
Since it's kind of similar as the Google consent mode problem, so to say, meaning what happens when you click on the ad? Can you actually track it? Can you track the conversion? That's what I read from the question. How do the affiliates will get the commission if you can't track the conversion? Google consent mode is basically they're trying to model the conversions that they don't see, and I think that's in long term more vendors will do a similar or will take a similar approach. If you can't, or if you can only count, let's say 50% of the users because it's only 50% that say that click on accept, then you will need to count the other 50% by forecasting, modeling, whatever, and try to find these conversions in the model somewhere.
Okay, makes sense. Another question regarding the Google report. Back on 2019, I think it was, that it predicted the significant revenue losses. How can that be interpreted?
Well, how can it be interpreted? Well, I get, I don't know which report is being referred to. In all honesty, what my thoughts are is that of course the report was made without actually forcing the industry to start thinking about it. So that's what actually has been done over the past 3 years. That okay, by announcing it, by enforcing it on 1% of the traffic, you're actually forcing change in a sense. While back in 2019, it was maybe only theoretical, and nobody really was forced to put time and effort into it because nothing was on the line. Right now, there's a whole industry on the line, so to speak. So one way or another, they will actually somebody will find a way to make sure that this works. That's my interpretation of it.
Right. Another question I got is, what role will content management platforms play in the future advertising strategies, and how I can integrate them effectively? I guess, Jan, this is more for you.
Yeah, so I mean, from a publisher's perspective, what's becomes more and more relevant. I mean, it's been relevant before, but even more now. How high is my acceptance rate? How high is my bounce rate? How can I optimize the whole thing? That's the obvious things. What we see in the past in the last few months, things like how does my CMP perform, or how does the CMP performance influence the performance of my own website? Things like the Google Core, the Google Web Vitals, these kind of things. Does it change my SEO? These kind of things. That's becoming more and more important. So not really factors that change the user or the user behavior, but more how Google or search engines will see it. So that's a big thing that we're working on at the moment. For example, privacy laws are increasing. There's more and more countries that will have privacy laws. We saw it on the agenda: Brazil, India, etc. So there will be more and more where you need to have a CMP, where you need to have some standardization, where you need to have find some ways to still be able to monetize. And the CMPs will be there as the anchor point for these publishers to try to put it all under one hood, so to say. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're not getting any more questions. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Robin, for your time. And here are some emails in case. Actually, you can write to us through the website in case you have any questions. Or
Sorry, everyone. I had one more, if that's okay.
Okay, sorry, Zach.
Yeah, I was typing while you were wrapping up. My bad. I'll just read it off since my mic's open now. Since both Robin and Jan, you both seem pretty confident the situation will sort itself out in the long term based on market solutions and demand. But what about the impact on revenue in the short term? We've seen when these technology shifts happen, publishers sometimes tend to get hit. Advertising platforms tend to take a hit until everything kind of resolves itself. So what are we in for in the short term here?
Yeah, so this is what I was referring to, that in order to make sure that in the short term, let's be honest, probably some publishers are going to get hit, but those will be the publishers that either are independent and they are not really aware of what's happening in the industry and therefore sort of leave it until it's too late, or they work with a partner that leaves it until it's too late. So that's why I said, as long as the partner, either if you work independently or if the partner that you work with needs to make sure that they stay on top of what's happening in the market. And then what we're going to see, okay, so right now it's going through a testing period, and then at a certain point, things are going to go very quickly. And it's very important that at that point that things go quickly, that change happens, that you are there to react. That's the way to minimize or not see any revenue losses whatsoever. Also, going a little bit back to the Google schedule, they're planning to start phasing out the third-party cookies in Q4 of the year, which I think is absolutely horrible timing. But at the same time, I think that means since that's the best time of the year, that as soon as something is being rolled out, they will also make sure that the publishers that they work with do actually have the solutions ready to make sure that their revenue is not being impacted in what is the period of the year, which for some publishers mean more than half of their total or their annual revenue. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jan.
Yeah, basically the same. What we see on our end is publishers tend to be a bit late, or everybody actually tends to be a bit late, and that's when you get hit with losses. So be on track with the news, with the technology, with the new things that are coming, and then there's usually enough time to prepare. But you need to prepare, right? So that's the thing. That's why we're having this webinar here today, to just talk about it, to be ready and prepare.
Okay, thanks for commenting at the end there, guys. Appreciate it.
No worries. Happy to help. And since of course mentions, it'd be very nice to keep being updated every now and then about what is happening and what impact it should have on business. Of course, you can count on it. And this is the third webinar that we do. Eventually, we'll be having more, and you will be posted. We will promote them through our social networks, via emails, and of course on the website. So we will let you know, of course. Well, having said that, once again, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Jan, Robin, thanks a lot again. Hopefully, this is the first of many. Well, it's actually the second with you, Jan. So hopefully, it's the second of many more to come. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.